Good day, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this webinar titled Civil 3D in Engineering Design. Just a brief intro. My name is Shoaib Yunus. I'm a specialist civil infrastructure, and today, on behalf of ID8, we're going to bring you just an overview of Civil 3D in Engineering Design and more or less the capabilities of the software itself, its application in terms of bringing in point files. We're going to look at surface generation. We're going to look at a simple platform design. And then, of course, we're going to look at or conclude with actually road design. So just a brief overview. This is the purpose of it. And if you have any questions or any queries, you are welcome to use the chat box, or alternatively, at the end of this webinar, there will be emails addresses that you can contact, where if you have any suggestion, queries, questions, you could always forward it, because we have a lot to get through within this time. But yeah, we'll take it as it comes. Okay, so let's officially get on with the webinar itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to bring in a surface file that you normally get from a surveyor. So what I mean by that is your XYZ file. So your surveyor normally goes out to site, he collects the points, the data, the description of the site, and it provides it to you using a XYZ file. So this can be formatted either in a text format, it can be in Excel, it can be LAN XML, it can be a map book. Civil 3D brings in a variety of land or survey data. So once you pull that in, you can just more or less sort it out according to its format. And as you can see on your screen, the formatting, I'm very happy with it. So you got the point number, your easting, your northing, point elevation, of course, your road description. So this is normally how a file or a survey file can actually be rendered, and how you can more or less import the file using Civil 3D. So once you have this file from a surveyor, you can simply import it, and then from there, you will see just now in a few seconds, the software will process these points that you have. And then from there on your screen, you can actually see that the points have actually been imported into the software. Okay, so it's as simple as that. In terms of displaying the point data according to what you'd like, there are various ways that you can do this. At the moment now, actually, if you're looking at the point data, it actually just has the point number attached to an actual symbol, but we can customize this to actually show different types of data, such as elevation, descriptions, and stuff like that. So I'm just going to show you a quick example of how you can do that. If you look at the point data, right, I can actually change that symbol with a 0 and an X according to whatever symbols that come either default with the software, or alternatively, I can actually create my own symbols using the create new function. So you can do that. In terms of displaying data, you can use different types of formats. The most common one is actually elevation only. So as you can see, once I do that, the elevation on the right-hand side actually updates. If I want to display elevation and description, I can actually do that. So you can see it gives me the elevation of the point, which is 68.16, and of course the description, it's actually a trail. So you have different options that you can use, and these are all dependent on your needs, right? If you want to display the entirety or all the data of that point, you can do that. Let me just show you here. So if I bring this to the center, you can see it gives me the Y coordinate, the X coordinate, the Z, which is your elevation, the point number, as well as the description. However, you can notice that the drawing becomes too cluttered, and you can't really work like that. So just bear in mind when you select something, how you want to more or less customize it and how you would like to display it. So I'm just going to switch that to the elevation only because that's what I'm interested in. Click OK, and now you should see that all the points have an elevation attached to them. Okay, so that's just simple points, bringing it in. It's as easy as a few clicks and you have the data set up for you. So yeah, that's what you can do in terms of the points. From here, you can actually generate contours, and you can also, in fact, filter out points depending on their characteristics or attributes. Also, if you are working in different different places, different zones, survey zones, you can simply set these by generally just going to the units and tab zone, and then from there you can actually select which country you're dealing with. So you can see there's a whole list of countries here, and depending on which country you do use, it will give you more or less the available coordinate systems or survey systems that you can use. So once you set this up and you import your point, it will be coordinated perfectly. So that's what you can do, and that's what you would normally do in a situation like this. So my drawing has been set up. I have brought in the points. And now the next thing I want to actually do is generate a actual terrain or actual surface. So let's create a surface very quickly from the point data that we actually brought. And we can give it a name, we can give it a description if you'd like, it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to call it site for the purpose of this demonstration. And then we can look at the different type of styles that you can actually use. Okay, so you can see I've created the surface site 1 on the left, and what I'm going to do now is actually I'm going to add some data to that. So the point data that we actually brought in, we can actually create what we call contours or the actual site from there. So that point that I brought in, I'm just going to click OK. And now you see that there's more or less a border around the site. The reason why this border is there is that it's the default site or the default style set to this site at the moment. So depending on what styles you have available, be it the custom ones that you do create, or the ones that come standard with the template or with the Civil 3D that you're using, these software or these style softwares are available to you. So I can actually change this to display contours just simply by changing the different styles. So I'm going to show you different ways that you can actually display the survey data or the surface according to your needs. Okay. So let's look at that. At the moment, you can see it's currently, I've got the Republic of South Africa style that I'm using. Of course, depending on your needs, like I said, you can be using different country kits that are available on Autodesk, and you can actually create your own templates that you can use. But let's look at some of the styles that we can use. So if you look at this list, there are different types of contour spacings as well as style. So I'm just going to go through a few so you can get an idea in terms of display and analysis, how you use it. So I'm going to go here and click apply. And now you can see that the data that you actually see on your screen is a combination of both contours as well as triangulation. This can be very useful, especially when you're querying a point or you analyzing survey data that is brought in from the software, and it makes your analysis a bit better and more accurate. So that's just one of the ways. The most common one that we normally use in consulting and engineering is the 1 and 5 meter background. You can see that it looks more or less much better, not too close, not too far. Also, there are different other styles. So if you prefer further space contours, you can actually select that, and you can see the spacing of the contours, major and minor. And then also you've got something called elevation banding. Okay, this is where it actually customizes the slope according to steepness, and you can actually go and customize this using the analysis function, where you can actually see according to color. Let me just make this a bit bigger. If you look at the color analysis, what types of elevations are associated with which color banding. So you can set this up and customize it according to what you require. Okay, minimize that. All right, and also you've got something that's slopes or watersheds that you can actually use, where it gives you more or less the predicted flow of water according to the steepness of the site. So this is very useful also when you're doing road design, catchment design, when you want to place your inlets, your drainage, or you just want to more or less pick up your high and low points. So like I said, you have different types of functionalities that you can use, and this is what I wanted to show you very quickly. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually use the 1 in 5 meter background for the analysis of this design. So as you can see, it's very easy to bring in points. It's very easy to actually generate a site with the contours, and also in terms of analysis, it shows you more or less how you can use the software to display what you want. Okay. All right. So now that we have our site, another thing that you can actually do is customize your points to show attributes. So like I said, let's say, for example, if we're looking at the site, I want to actually denominate or to actually clearly see where the trees are on the site, right? So I can actually create a filtering system depending on what data is in my survey file, all right? And I can actually display it on the site. So depending on how your survey file is, you can actually go and say, you know what, I want to pick up, in this case, I want all the pine trees in the site. And you can see that simply by actually filtering it, we can actually pick up all the trees in the site. So this will be dependent on what definition is actually used by a surveyor in the points file. So you will have to actually go through that and then pick it up accordingly. So that's what I'm going to do, because I know that there's pine trees in this survey that I'm using. Now, if you look and you zoom in, depending on my assigning, you can see the trees are clearly demarcated on the site, which is really nice. So it gives you much more visual appeal, much more visual analysis, that just by looking or having a glance of it, you can see now exactly where the trees are actually positioned, which is very useful. This can, like I said, it can apply to a lot of things. You can pinpoint your inlets, you can do your fire hydrants and etc. services, stuff like that, that you can actually customize or assign a style to it, and then from there pick up the positioning and assign a symbol to it, like the tree symbol that you are seeing on your screen right now. All right, so that's just an example. Okay, so now that we have an overview of the site and what's available on the site, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to do a very quick platform analysis or platform design. So I'm just going to draw a random platform here, maybe somewhere on the top. Okay, let's say maybe there. Okay, let's say that's going to be our platform. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to convert this, that it can actually use 3D data or elevation data to it. And I'm going to actually take it from there. Okay, so this is what I'm going to actually do. And then, of course, when you're doing platform design, normally you do know what's your finished level of the platform. So I'm just going to exaggerate it according to the site I have. 75 is going to be very high, but it's going to give you more or less an indication of how the platform works. So once you actually set in the platform itself or the finished level of the platform, you can actually from there apply grading to it, and then depending on what you want or what your parameters are, you can actually set them up using this. So if you look at the gradings, there's 4 major gradings that you can use. It's called grade to distance, grade to elevation, relative elevation, and grade to surface. So these are 4 different types that are normally used also in construction. So if you have been in construction and you have done platform design, you should be very familiar with these terms. But the most common one used is grade to surface, where it actually minimizes cut and fill and makes your design go much more economical and much more, I would say, accurate. So the one we're going to be using just to demonstrate is the grade to surface functionality. Okay, and If you want to actually set your cut and fill parameters, you can by default first set it up here, or automatically as the prompts pop up when you're doing the design, you can actually enter your parameters in there. Okay, so I'm going to actually grade this platform. Okay, and I'm going to make it such that you can either use a grade or you can actually use a slope, right? It depends on you, whichever one you're comfortable with. If I pick, for example, grade, you can see by default it's set to 50%. If you're using a slope, it's same as 1:2, right? So I'm just going to accept the defaults for time purposes. Okay, so I showed you the grade. If you select slope, you can see it's 1:2. And like I said, you can edit this according to whatever your needs be. And once I've done that, you can see it actually has graded the platform for me. Simple, very, very simple, straightforward to use. And this is fully editable, fully dynamic. You can go and edit the elevations after if you have any changes. You can move the platform corners and it'll update accordingly. And if you want to view actually the elevations and stuff like that, you can more or less view it in the elevation editor. And from there, you can actually also, like an Excel sheet, edit the platform. All right. So that's just platforms. A quick analysis tool or quick cool feature is you can actually visualize things in 3D depending on the analysis that you want. So I'm going to show you very quickly the site in 3D. We've got something that's called Object Viewer, right? If I want to see the site in 3D, this is how it looks in Object Viewer, right? So it gives you more or less a much more better feel of what data you're dealing with. And you have customized options where you can view it in different ways. If I click, for example, conceptual, you can see on your screen it has more of a conceptual feel. If I change it to realistic, it's got a different triangulation overlay. If I got shades of gray, for example, you can see depending on steepness, the shades of gray. So you have different types of analysis that you can actually set up here. So this is what the Object Viewer does. Okay. All right, so the next thing we can actually do now, we're just going to finish up our platform very quickly by creating an infill, simply by just clicking into the object. And then now we can actually see this platform in 3D. Okay, so let's go back to our Object Viewer. And now you can see the platform is done. Simple as that. Just going to switch it to a more realistic view. There we go. So it shows you how the corners are connected. The banking, and very realistic. You can see your cut, your fill, stuff like that, and it gives you more better feel. Like I said, if you've done something incorrectly, you can actually pick it up here. Maybe one of the corners is too high or too low, you can actually edit it here. Okay, so that's just platforms in a nutshell, very, very quickly. You can actually also generate your cut and fill form volumes from here. So let's just look at that very quickly. You see we have the grading volume tools on the toolbar or the ribbon. If I can come here, and then you can see it gives me more or less the cut and fill. Okay, let me just move this one side. Go back here. Okay, so there's your cut and fill volumes that are given to you in a one-line fashion. Of course, you can export this to a table. You can also, it's just one line. It helps you for your bill of quantities, your estimates and stuff like that. And in here, you can actually raise and lower your platform according to what you'd like. So it's currently set to 1 meter increments. So if I click the up button, see what happens to the software, you'll see on the right-hand side, the banks have updated and also the quantities have also updated. And then it also gives you a description to tell you how much you raised it by. If I drop it back, you see it also tells me lower it back to 1 meter. If you want to optimize it, it's got a cut to fill function where you can actually say, you know what, I want it to balance 0, which is very unlikely on site. If you did that, kudos to you. But if it gives you that option, and then it auto balances it. And then you can see on the right-hand side, the platform updates to cut and fill. The only disadvantage here, of course, the initial height that you had selected or your finish platform level goes off. Of course, that's common knowledge. And yeah, so that's just platforms very, very quickly. So you can see it's very easy, very intuitive, very dynamic to use. In terms of the platforms itself, like I said, you can edit the elevations according to what you'd like. Let me just minimize that, sorry. Okay, so like I said, if you want to come and edit these heights, they're fully editable. You can add slopes, percentages in terms of drainage, and you can actually see, depending on which corner you are, if I zoom in here, you'll see there's a triangle. That triangle denotes which corner you're actually referring to. So if you do get confused sometimes, just zoom in and view that triangle, and of course you can edit it accordingly. Right, so that's just platforms very quickly, very simple, and like I said, very intuitive. You can also create transitions where if you have different platform or different bankings, you can actually set maybe this one 1:3, you can set this one 1:4, and then you can click the spacing between them or your transition length, and it will auto transition it for you. So very easy platforms in Civil 3D, very intuitive, very straightforward. Okay, so that's platforms in a nutshell. I'm just gonna delete the platform now because we're not really gonna need it. And I'm gonna concentrate on the actual road design things. Okay. All right, so now that we have our surface, I showed you how to bring in point files, how very easy it is, how to generate more or less a surface, how to display it in terms of analysis or what your requirements are, how to generate your contours, how to filter out points is very easy. You can display your elevation data and stuff like that. Now, the next thing I'm going to look at is just a simple road design. Very, very simple. Just going to draw maybe like an S-curve, for example, and then you'll see how the software, how interactive the software is. Okay, so I'm just going to do a very, very quick road. Okay, I'm just going to leave the defaults as they are. Just the very cool thing here is, or what I want to bring your attention to, is the actual design criteria. So it has built-in AASHTO design standards built into it, all right, depending on the design speeds, of course. And this will actually help you or flag if your minimum radii is too small, or if, for example, the curve doesn't comply to your standards depending on what you set. So you can use a default AASHTO that's built into the software, or alternatively, you can create your own. Right, so I'm just using the default one because it works very good. Right, if you have this checked on, it will automatically flag your road design. If not, then it would not pick it up. So it's totally up to you. All right, so I'm just going to create a very, very quick S-curve. Okay, so let's say maybe there, there, and there. All right, so don't judge my design capabilities, right? I just want to emphasize the purpose or the effectiveness of the software. So you can see I've just done a very quick alignment, and this is where the design criteria actually pops in. So you can see there's a big triangle that's telling you, listen, this curve doesn't meet or comply to the standards that you've set. You need to go and revisit that. So this is very good for a designer, and if you're complying to standards, depending on wherever you are in the world, and you can actually go and sort this out using simple grips, simple commands that are built in with the software. You can use different functions depending on how sharp the curve is, and then it will update depending on your parameters. Okay, so that's what it does. I'm not going to really sort that out now because it's going to take a bit of time, or it will take a bit of fiddling when you're very used to the software like myself. And yeah, that's how simple you drew an alignment. Okay, and of course you can go modify it earlier as you want. You can delete points, you can add points, you can add curves, delete curves, and stuff like that. So that's just a quick alignment done. The next thing we can actually generate from here is what we call our long sections or surface profiles. You can see that we can actually generate it depending on what we require. You can give it a name, you can specify a style or a template depending on what type of options you have. You can specify the chainage, you can customize your profile heights, your data bands, which actually display the type of data you have, And of course, if you want to use hatching to display the cut and fill, you're welcome to. So this is a very quick long section done and dusted. And you can see it's given us the ground or elevation profile accordingly, right? Now, this is where the dynamic nature of Civil 3D is very, very awesome, very, very cool. So I want you to look at or pay attention to the long section that we have just done. If I have to move the alignment for any reason, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to shift the alignment. And this is where the dynamic nature is very awesome. Just watch what happens to the long section. You see, it has updated instantly, which makes it very, very, very awesome in terms of revision and design changes. We do know that we constantly do a lot of changes and that we constantly sometimes revise our designs and stuff like that. And from there, depending on the software you're using, it can be either a nightmare or, as you can see now, it's very, very intuitive and very straightforward. Okay, so that's what I call dynamic nature. So now that I have a long section done, I can simply do a vertical alignment for this long section or your finished road levels. And then from there, we can take it. So like I said, I'm leaving everything as a default. Here as well, you can assign a design criteria where you can more or less, as the horizontal alignment picked up differences, you can base yours on a K-table or your side distance and stuff like that. Here also, you can customize and make your own design file, but I'm just going to use the ASHTO that's built in, right? So I'm just going to do a very, very, very quick vertical alignment, right? So it's very, very intuitive to use. Okay, please don't design roads like this. All right, so this is just for purpose of displaying or a demo like this is. And here we are. We've done a very good, a very quick, I wouldn't say very good, sorry, wrong word, very quick analysis or very quick design. You can see that sometimes when your curve is too sharp, it actually converts it to a PI to tell you, listen, this is actually going to be a PI. And if you have a curve, it's capable. You can see that there is a triangle now here, denoting that this curve actually doesn't meet the standards. Right, and then you can go optimize it according to your cut and fill. So you can see that the design here, there's a lot of cut, a lot of fill, and you can more or less do your design or your alignment accordingly. So please apply your engineering judgment here or your design background, and then from there, just keep on designing, okay? So now that we have the vertical alignment, of course, like I said, it's fully editable, fully dynamic. I can drag these points according to wherever I need them, and they will update accordingly. Okay, so now that we have a vertical alignment, it also provides labeling. So you can see it gives you your elevation, your PVI, your elevation of the PVI, your K value that's currently there, and of course the length of your vertical curve. So that's just labeling, and that's customization where you can actually set it up. And if you look at below this, you actually have bands that are auto-generated for you. And of course, you can go and set this up. I'm not going to really go into that because that's more like on the training side of things. But you can set your centerline, your camber, and then these details or these elevations will update accordingly and will give you a more accurate representation of your data. Also, same with the vertical curves, it shouldn't be looking like that. It should actually be displaying more or less your vertical analysis or your vertical profile. I will just change that one very quick because that doesn't really take much time. Let me just get to that very quickly. Okay, so I'm just going to change that so you can see more or less how that applies. So you see, once you have the correct data assigned to a band, now if you look at that vertical profile that we looked at, it actually looks much more better. Okay, you can see the curve is here, gives you the vertical curve length as well as the K value, and of course your curve radius and stuff like that. Okay, so very easy, very straightforward to use. And of course you can assign cross sections, what we call assemblies. I will just use one for this road design. Of course, you have to have a cross section for a road. In terms of super elevation and stuff, you can also set that up. So let's just look at that very briefly. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to now create what we call an assembly or a cross section. Okay, so let's just get that active. So the software actually comes built in with some assemblies that are commonly used. Like I said, cross sections are called assemblies. And not only that, they are basic or variety of objects that you can actually use, right? So you can see lanes, shoulders, medians, curbs, daylights being your actual curb or your curb detailing. And then you've got various other types of stuff that you have here, and you even have bridge decks and box girders that you can import. Right? You can create your own, of course, but for this example, like I said, I'm just going to be using whatever comes default with the software. So I'm just going to use a normal 2-lane road, okay, and I'm going to place my cross section maybe somewhere there. All right, and now you can see on your screen, this is actually a cross section. Okay, so I'm just going to go show you some parameters here. If you click on any of the parameters, it's fully customizable. This cut slope, full slope, you can actually customize it according to what you'd like. Okay. So if you want different slopes on different sides, you can do that fully using the customization tools that are available to you. So if you look at the parameters, you can see these are all fully editable. So you can specify exactly what type of analysis and what type of stuff you need depending on your project, and fully interoperable and integrated into your software. Okay, so like I said, this applies to everything, and the thing I'm going to just look at is actually the lanes. So I'm going to click on the left lane and let's go into the parameters. You can see that you can set your lane widths here, your camber, crossfall, depending what you'd like. In terms of your pavement depths and your layers below that, you can actually set that up. If you'd like to add a bit more layers to your cross sections, there's something called a sub-assembly composer where you can actually customize it and add as many layers as you'd like. So yeah, you can actually use that. And then, of course, you can specify your slope away from crown towards the crown. And depending on your customization and what your requirements are, this is exactly where you can find these type of data. So fully operable, fully customizable, and you can take it from there whether you want to do it or not. Super elevation, of course, you can also set it up here, left lane, outside lane. So if you're doing in geometric design, you can actually customize it according to what you'd like or what's your requirement. Okay, so I'm just gonna leave that. So yeah, this is your cross section, and I'm gonna actually assign this to our, I don't even know what to call this. It's not really an alignment, it's more like a roller coaster. But anyway, that's our alignment that we drew. I'm gonna assign it to that, and then once we do that, we can actually generate what we call the road corridor. Okay, so let's just do that very quickly. So I'm gonna just create now what we call the road corridor, which is very important to us. And then we can give it a name, a description. You can specify whatever layouts you want here, of course. I'm going to select my cross section, my target surface. And then once I've put in all the parameters, you should see that we have generated now a corridor on our screen. Okay, so you can see the banding of the corridor. There's different colors. So green being full, red being cut. You can also set that up according to your color preferences, but of course, it's more or less simpler or straightforward as the default setting is. And if you zoom in, you can see the corridor set perfectly. Okay, so that's just your corridor done and dusted. The next thing you can actually do, like I said, you can generate cut and fill formulas or cut and fill data from your road. This is simply by creating the top or your finished surface, and then of course referencing it to your data, and then from there you can actually generate your cut and fill tables. All right, so I'm gonna go through that very quickly, and you can see how we can actually generate data according to that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create that so that we have more or less a surface or two reference surfaces that we can actually use in our design, and then we can generate some cut and fill volumes from there very quickly. All right, and like I said, once you have that, you can actually more or less customize and display these data or these volumes depending on what your occurrence is in terms of your design. So everything is project specific if you're in consultancy. All right, I'm just going to do that very quickly. So now that we have our reference surfaces created, you might not notice it just at first glance, but if I zoom in, now you should see that there is more or less surface data that's on that corridor. You can see these lines, all right? Okay, so now that we have we have something to reference from, we can actually generate the corridor surface accordingly, all right? So how we do that is very simple. We can now do the more or less the analyzing or the volumes of it, right? So you can generate a report, a table, depending on what your preference is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to actually do a table, right? But before we actually do that, we have to create, or we can actually do cross sections. So we need to tell the software that, listen, I want you to sample the road according or in increments of 20 meters, 10, 50, depending on what you'd like. I'm just going to use 50 for now. Okay. So the default that comes with the software is actually 50. We're going to just use that. I'm going to accept the defaults as they are. And then, like I said, you can set the increments up according to what you'd like. It's currently set to 50. I know in design, we normally use 20, and then along the curves is either 5 or 10. But like I said, I'm just going to leave it as it is. And you can set it up according to what your preference is. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that. And then once that's done, you can see it's more or less on the screen, shows you those blue lines that's cutting it up. So now that you've set the increments for your road, what you're going to do now you can actually compute these volumes. So that's done. So let's just do this very quickly. Okay, so I just want maybe, for example, do an earthworks volume. You have different volume types or different volume methods that you can really use. These volumes differ by sheer decimals. So you can use any one you like. I'm just going to use, for example, the prismoidal. And from there, we can actually customize what we want, right? So depending on what you'd like or the references of your surfaces, you set that up. And now we can actually do a table. So the table is fully customizable, of course. You can set how many rows, how many columns, your spacing, whatever type of stuff you want to set, like you're seeing now on your screen. And of course, it's fully dynamic, right? So at the bottom, it is dynamic. So that means if you make any changes to the road, the table quantities will update. So that is phenomenal, okay? If you set it to static, good luck. It's not going to really update, but we have given you the option for that. But of course, please just leave it dynamic. From experience, I'm talking. Dynamic is the way to go. So everything is in sync and up to date. Okay, so we have that. I'm just going to accept the defaults like I've been so far, and I can drop the table anywhere in my drawing. And now you can see it gives you the quantities in a tabulated form. You can choose to either share this or keep it to yourself, use it for quantity estimates. And it's very helpful when you're doing, of course, your bill of quantities. So you can see there's a lot of capabilities available with the software. You can also do cross sections, plot layouts, and stuff like that. I think I'm gonna just cover that, and then from there we can actually conclude on the roads part of things. So I'm gonna just do the printing layouts of stuff, and then you can actually see from there how it goes. All right. So we've done the alignment, we have the cross section, we have created the corridor, and let's say we're happy with what we see. You can do actually section views. So you can create either multiple. So this will be, of course, your cross section that you normally do. I'm just gonna go through this normal, just leave everything as a default. And then if I say create section views, I'm just going to drop it somewhere clean in my screen. And you can see it's generated cross sections for me. So you can see the cut, the fill, where your road is actually sitting, depending on your chainages that you set, and you have full control over that. Okay, right. These lines may pop up. You can actually what we call freeze them. They're just for analysis purposes, so you don't really need to see them. Okay. All right. So now that you have your cross sections, you can also do plan and profile drawings. So that's our default way in engineering of displaying our plans to site, or if you want to print stuff. But we have also added options where you can do plan drawings, you can do profile, or like I said, the default way is plan on the top, profile at the bottom. So let's just have a look at that very quickly. So let's do the plan and profile drawings for this road that we have created. Okay, I'm just gonna leave these as they are. So you can see those options I was talking about, plan and profile, profiles only, or plan and profile. So you can select what you'd like. Of course, you can actually select your title block and what type of paper size templates. If you have your default templates that you're already using in construction or consulting, you can use that according to your company specifications. And then, of course, you can set up what type of data you actually want to use, and depending on what types of elevations or band sets you want to use. All right, so like I said, fully customizable, fully up to you. Okay, of course, the longer your road is, the more sheets there are going to be generated. So it's going to ask me now to actually generate it. You have the option of either exporting the sheets separately or saving it into the current drawing. I'm going to use all layouts in the current drawing, and then I'm just going to leave everything as a default, and then I'm going to say create sheets. It's going to ask me to save it. I'm just going to save it on my desktop. Okay, and then it's going to ask me for an origin, so I'm just going to place it anywhere here. It's just going to take a few seconds to actually generate my stuff. All right, and then now you should see that the plan and profile drawings have been done. Okay. Okay, this more or less highlights the high and low points of your profiles. So if you see these triangles floating around, don't be afraid. It's just basically your grid heights. Okay, so I'll give you an example. So if I go set the elevation, it's currently set to that. If I use automatic height, for example, and I click OK, now you understand what happened. If you go back to the model space now, it'll just take a few seconds on your side to generate. And now you see I set the grids higher. So if you see data that's actually floating around somewhere and you're not sure why, that's the obvious reason why. It's just that you have to more or less adjust the grid heights, and your data should be customized accordingly. All right. So that's just an example. Okay, so now that you have your long sections done, and you can see at the bottom of the screen, your sheets have more or less been developed for you. If I click on sheet 1, for example, there is your plan and profile drawing. It looks very nice. I'm just using a default template, so it's just a normal title block that comes standard with the software. Of course, you'll have your company ones displayed here accordingly, and you can adjust the views, of course, just by simply positioning things better in the viewports, and then you can actually scale it according to what you'd like if it's not fitting or something like that. Fully customizable, of course, and like you can see, if I have it, for example, like that, it's going to print like that, and fully customizable. You can add a north arrow to it where it will give you the direction, or it will more or less relate the positioning of the road according to north, depending on your coordination of your file. You can add a reference system where it adds like lines on here, not really used that much, but you can if you want to be fancy. And yeah, that's just your plan and profile done very, very quickly. Okay. So yeah, that's roads, very, very easy, very, very simple, straightforward to do. And from here, you can actually more or less, as you're using the software, customize it further to and fine tune it according to what your requirements are. Okay, so that's just road design. Then you can actually do what we call parcels, which is like land plots and stuff like that. I'll just do a very, very simple one that you can actually look at. Okay, so let's say, for example, you've got a land layout somewhere. So I'm just going to generate one very, very quickly. Okay. Okay, let's make this a bit bigger. Then we can more or less customize it. Okay, so let's say these are plots. Okay, so once you generate these plots, you can actually even assign elevations to them. It's like I said, you have a lot of power here because you can use the grading tools as well, and it doesn't have to be linear, right? Your shapes can be any shape you like. That's why I've done like a weird shape there right now. Okay, so let's say these are plots and I want to actually convert them to objects or parcel objects. I can actually just select them, because this is like the easiest way that you can actually create parcels, because most of the data now that you receive is either from urban planners, it's from GIS technicians and stuff, where the plots that have already been demarcated, you just have to maybe add some styles that you can. You can add different labels. I'm just going to add the whole shabam here, then you can see exactly what it is. Okay. All right. Now, once I've done that, it's actually just going to switch off the elevations, then you can notice them a bit better. Okay, this is just the action viewer that pops up all the time to tell you, listen, you've done this, you've done that. It's like an event tracker, so to say. So it's not really that important. While it can be if you want to track your progress or if you want to find out where you went wrong. So what I'm going to do here is just for you to more or less notice the labels. I'm going to switch off the point data, so it doesn't really bother us. Okay, here we go. That's a bit better. All right, now if you zoom in here, you can see that it has the direction of the segment as well as the length. So degrees, minutes, seconds, surveyors, this is where you come in, gives you the bearing distance or the polar distance like you're seeing on your screen. It applies to any segment. If, like I said, sometimes labels become cluttered, that's where you have this problem here. But of course, it's fully, you can actually shift it to the side if they are overlapping. So not a big problem there. And then you can actually convert this to say plot 3 or estate number 3, or depending on that. I'm not going to go into the customization of it. And then of course, like I said, it works on any shape. So you can see that it gave me the length or the hypotenuse, and then of course the bearing distance. So that's where your parcels come in, and then you can actually customize it according to what you'd like. If you want to do parcels from scratch, you can do the creation tools where you can set an area limit, you can set your frontage, so you can put in specific parameters that you can actually use. And of course, you can see as I'm clicking on it, there's a graphic at the bottom that more or less gives you an idea of what you're referring to. So if you're not very clued up with it, this gives you a good indication. So normally here you're given the entire earth size or the entire land size, and then from there you can subdivide it accordingly. And then there are different methods that you can actually use, slide line and swing lines, that are a bit more complicated. But the method that I've just showed you now, where you receive it from the GIS technician, this is, I would say, 80% or 85% the way to go normally, right? So you have full integration for that as well. And then, like I said, you can actually edit elevations. You can set elevations depending on what you'd like. You can see the elevation is currently set to 0. That's because it doesn't actually use it. And I can actually set the elevations of each corner of the property and stuff like that. So very, very interactive with your design, very applicable, very easy to use. And yeah, Civil 3D in terms of design is used throughout the entire world. So Autodesk is known worldwide. If you have your eye on the international community, whichever country you are, you do know, like, in terms of infrastructure, Europe, or rather Dubai, are like the trendsetters, the leaders, and the designers from all over the world are actually contemplating and collaborating on the same software. So you want to be on the same software that's, first of all, dynamic. It makes your life much more easier. Road design, be it platforms, surfaces, parcels, whole range of stuff, and also, of course, basic AutoCAD. If you look here, you've got different workspaces that you can actually use. There's drafting and annotation, that's your basic AutoCAD. If I click on here, for example, you can see that the ribbon automatically updates. So all your AutoCAD users, you can actually do AutoCAD drawings in here as well. If you have GIS data, I'm not going to go in 3D modeling. That's also part of your basic AutoCAD. Okay, let me just click it. And then you can see the ribbon updates displaying those functionalities as well. And there's also a GIS workstation, so planning and analysis, that's also built into Civil 3D. So if you use Map 3D, it's also automatically layered into the Civil 3D interface, where you can pull in GIS data, map data, FDO sources, and stuff like that. So this software is very, very powerful in terms of civil applications, civil design, civil integration, infrastructure, and stuff like that. It's fully interoperable with Autodesk software across the board, including Revit. So Revit's the more or less very famous software that's used in Autodesk by architects, designers, structural engineers, and stuff like that. And you can bring in the model here, and you can export your model to Revit as well. So that's where Civil 3D is, and that's just an overview. And of course, I'm gonna conclude with this very, very cool feature of the road design. Okay, so I thought I'll leave this for last. Okay, and another very important point is that this is fully operable or works with InfraWorks. If you're not familiar with InfraWorks, I suggest you please do check it out. A remarkable tool that integrates with Civil 3D, and it makes your design very, very, very active, and also allows client buy-in, client approval, client interaction, makes it much more easier, and also helps you display your vision and your design intent much better. Okay, so I'm gonna look at the corridor. Okay, and a very cool function is the drive function. Okay, so what this is, you'll see now, really, really awesome, where you can actually drive through your road once done. Let's try it again. So I'm gonna say maybe corridor. Okay, so the driving function more or less gives you an option where you can more or less go through your road once you've designed it. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna use the vertical alignment, of course, of your road to go through. Okay, this one might look a bit weird because we did a very quick design. All right, but you're gonna see now how cool this is. Okay, so it brings you to more or less a 3D viewer that you can actually use, where now you can actually drive through your road design according to that. Okay, let me just get back there. Okay, so this is a very good layout tool, or I would say a recap tool or just to make sure tool, that makes sense, where you can actually review your design. Yes, that's the word I was looking for. This is a good review tool. Okay, so once you've done your vertical alignment, everything is checked, you've done your long sections and stuff, your bankings, you cut and fold, you pasted your surfaces, and you have one site in conjunction, you can actually drive through your road and view it to see if it's okay or not. And on the top, you can actually adjust what speed you want to drive it with, what type of view. So currently it's set to conceptual view. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave the defaults as they are and watch what happens when I click play. Isn't this awesome, right? So it will drive through a road. You can see I'm in cut here. You can see the banks, and you can actually go through your road according to, like I said, whatever speed you like. There's that, I would think, that crazy bend that we had, that alignment. Yeah, definitely. That's a total drifter. um, but yeah, you can drive through a road from start to end. Very nice simulation, and it gives you more or less a good representation of what you've had and what you've done. So visually, very good. Detail design, very good as well, and forms crux of all your civil applications. All right, so that's, I think I can conclude on that. I know this was a very quick blitz webinar on Civil 3D in engineering design, but I'm sure you've got the gist of the application of the software. Also, you can create data shortcuts which allow you to work on a site or multiple people to work on one design file and different locations on the site at once, and it updates accordingly. So this is normally where you link it to either a server or something of that sort, and you can apply that. Okay, so I think I have more or less given a comprehensive overview of Civil 3D, its functionality in civil design and road design, and I really hope that this has given everyone a good idea of the actual capabilities of it. Look, the whole purpose of this webinar was to indicate or to display its capabilities, because like I said, you must be aware of what's actually capable in the design software before you can actually say, hey, you know what, I'm struggling with this, or there's nothing that can actually do it. And this is the whole purpose of this. We have more or less tuned in today, and I thank everyone for tuning in to more or less highlight and give a generic overview of what Civil 3D can do and its application. So I thank you very much. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to give or type in, should you have any further queries, anything that you would maybe need in terms of engineering or design, or you might have maybe some questions. All right, I'm gonna just put on these emails of people that you can actually contact at Ideate. So on your screen now, you should see some emails. So we would love to hear from you if you have any questions, if you have any queries, any comments, feedback in general. You can contact either Eric or Zoe, and they will kindly assist you. So I don't see any questions or any hands raised in terms of the software that we're using. So I will ask again, if there are any questions, please use the chat box and text me, or alternatively just send us an email to these two email addresses, and we can take it from there. So I'm just going to wait maybe a minute or so if there are any questions. Okay, what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna unmute and then we're gonna see if there are any questions, I will take them. So I can see 2 hands raised here, which is really awesome. So I'm gonna unmute and then if you have any questions, go for it. Okay, I can see that you have been self-muted, so if you'd like to speak, you can unmute, or alternatively, use the chat box and I would answer your question. Okay, so I have a request here, or a question to say that if I could show how the road design is going to look like in InfraWorks. Let me see if I do have an actual model that I can show you right now of how the interface of InfraWorks really works. Okay, so I will have to actually navigate to my folder. Okay, so just give me a second on that. Okay, so I will actually have to start up my InfraWorks very quickly. Okay, so it's good that some people have heard of InfraWorks. Normally, we don't have that much feedback in terms of a lot of people really don't know how it looks. So while my InfraWorks is actually opening up in the background, what I will do is just attend to the other questions that are here. So let me see other questions. Okay, so this is a comment. Of course, there will be a link to this webinar that will be shared. So and will be uploaded. So that is of course always a follow up. So this webinar, the link will be sent to you via email, and you will get notified once it's up. And then of course you feel free to actually visit it whenever you have time. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Okay, so I think that's the only 2 questions that I do have here. Okay, so just to recap, the webinar will have the link will be available where you can go view it if you want to see something again. And of course, we're just going to look at InfraWorks very quickly. I know we're running short on time, but I will just give you a display of more or less what InfraWorks looks like. So for those that don't really have or have no idea what InfraWorks actually is, you can have a look now very quickly. All right, so this is a nice example. Let's fly to Dubai, everyone. Okay, so I've got a model of Dubai here, which I was working on or playing with a bit, and we're gonna look at that. Okay, so welcome to InfraWorks, everyone. This is the future, okay, and it's heavily linked with Civil 3D. So please, if you haven't seen this before, please go and check it out. And yeah, you can always contact us also if you require any further info. So I think, yeah, let's just look at it. So this is just a model on InfraWorks. I'm not sure if it's gonna render very quickly. There might be a slight lag on your side because of my computer in terms of my internet speed. But okay, in terms of roads, I'm just gonna try and zoom into a road here. You can see the roads will more or less be displayed like this. Okay, I'm not going to go into how you can actually create the roads and stuff like that, but your roads are actually done like this. And then from there, you can actually manipulate it or display it according to whether you want it to be an arterial, a highway, and stuff like that. Okay, what we can maybe do in the future, we can actually have an InfraWorks webcast, depending on how things go, and because there has been a lot of interest in that area. But yeah, this is InfraWorks. You can see the amazing detail. I don't know if you can view it on your side, but the water or the sea around it is actually being simulated. You can or animated, where you can see a ripple effect. But yeah, it's a great detail that you can be using here, and you can actually do road designs very, very quick, very, very easy in here. Okay, let's see if there are any other questions. Please use the questions pan or use the chat box to get your question across. I'll just wait maybe a few more seconds if there are any other questions. Okay, I think we can officially wrap this up. There aren't any other questions here, but thank you very much for attending this overview of Civil 3D. I hope it was very beneficial to you. I hope that it's very beneficial to you. And of course, okay, I see there's one more question. Okay, let me just attend to this one very quickly, then I promise we wrap up. Okay, so there's a question you're asking about the vehicle tracking tab. Okay, so vehicle tracking is an add-on to Civil 3D. Okay, that's used. It's not actually in Civil 3D, but it's an add-on. Okay, so it's used for doing vehicle simulation, swept path analysis, and stuff like that, where you can actually simulate vehicle movements. Very helpful in parking lot designs, parking out layouts. Also, when you're doing more or less intersection designs and stuff, to simulate whether a truck or a design vehicle is actually going to have the minimum or maximum or the required turning radii, you can actually simulate it on vehicle tracking, which is very, very cool. So that's what vehicle tracking is, and that's how it's applied in the software. So when you open your Civil 3D or your standard Civil 3D might not have it, you should, if you look at mine, I have a lot of integrated software with my Civil 3D. I've got, like I said, vehicle tracking. I've got another, I've got a lot of software that's added into here, right? And those are Autodesk software. So, like I said, vehicle tracking, you can also go and check that out. Okay, so I'll just click on the vehicle tracking. Then you can see the functions here. So it's all related to more or less your vehicle swept path analysis, roundabout design, and stuff like that. So there are a lot of softwares. Like I said, Civil 3D is at the heartbeat of all civil engineering design, infrastructure design projects, and stuff like that. If you're in the civil, Revit is more on the built environment. So from a civil point of view, this is the very, very powerful software to have, and I recommend that you use this software accordingly. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up now. Thank you all for attending. Very, very, very big thanks to everyone that's actually attended. Like I said, if you have any questions, any queries, you can contact the email addresses on your screen and it will be directed to me. So thank you very much. I hope it was very insightful, very light shedding, and hopefully I have enhanced your understanding of Civil 3D, its capabilities, and hopefully made your design life much more easier. So once again, thank you and enjoy your day further.